Hey, everybody, this is Mr. Haig at Mr. Haig's Class Podcast. And today we're going to talk to a very special guest, Mr. Peter Romero. Did I say it right? Or Romero, right?
Romero. Romero.
Romero, got it. Okay, and he's going to discuss with us the wonderful new world of virtual reality. Oh, yeah, that is something that every student really wants to get involved with. I want to get involved with it, and it's the near future. It's everywhere. It's going to impact our lives. And you know, Peter, how are you?
Fine. How are you doing today?
I'm doing okay. I'm just kind of like just looking into all this fun stuff that you're doing here, and it just really amazes me how. Now, what is virtual reality, if you can explain to the audience?
Sure. Well, virtual reality has kind of changed over the years. I first got introduced to it back in the 1980s, but back then it was real primitive and there wasn't a lot going on. It was pretty much wireframe. Wasn't anything you could really see. But if you think about this, that you're at home or you're at school and you put on these goggles, whether they're goggles or even glasses now that they have, and you're able to all of a sudden see things what look real. They're in a three-dimensional shape,
Hmm.
perspective. When I gave this talk to a junior high school a while back, I said, this actually began in the Renaissance period. And they said, and I told them that was back in the 1400s. And they said, whoa, whoa, they didn't have electronics back there. And I said, no, they didn't. But believe it or not, that's where perspective was born. A guy by the name of Felipe Brunelleschi invented the 3D perspective concept to build this dome in Florence, Italy. And that was the beginning. And once he did that, other of his apprentices started to learn how to do it, and they started drawing, and other artists started to copy, so it started to multiply. Well, we've gone from the 2D perspectives and looking 3D to today, which is wearing a goggle. In fact, I could put one on in my room right now and I would see everything that's in my room, but all of a sudden there would be an object there. It could be a creature, it could be a person, it could be an object. It looks real. I can even pick it up. It has no weight, but I can actually pick it up and use it, turn it around, look at it.
So an example for those of you who may not, it's like sort of like the Meta Oculus,
Right,
that the virtual reality headset that we see. I have about three of them in my classroom, and it's not easy to operate those things because there's so much involved as far as like accounts are concerned. But it is really going to change a lot of things on this planet, how we do things. I know that uh, auto mechanic students are learning how to fix cars without having a car there. Uh,
right.
Blow molding, engineering students can put things together without an object being there. Even medical students can actually learn how to serve a patient or operate, be in an operating room without an actual cadaver or a live student there. And it's really amazing. It's so, what exactly are you doing? Exactly. How do you think that more schools, and why do you think more schools are kind of afraid of this stuff?
I
If they're
think
afraid.
schools are afraid of it because they're still associating VR with games.
Okay.
All right, that's the big one.
Mhm.
And the minute you start using the word gamification or anything dealing with games, schools back away as usual. They just think, no, this is not what we're doing. We're teaching kids, but they don't see the important parts of it. For example, my background's engineering. So I had to learn how to do drafting and lettering and all that kind of stuff. And when I made a blueprint of something, I had to make a prototype. Now, that prototype could have been made from paper, cardboards, foam, whatever. And eventually I had a prototype to work with.
Okay.
But if I wanted to change it, I had to change the plans. I had to change everything, even maybe the object itself.
Okay.
Today, we can actually build in 3D objects inside our goggles. And then now we have them, but not just to look at, but to manipulate. We can actually make them move. We can make them fly. For example, in this new project I'm working with this year is for the students to make an air drone rescue copter.
Interesting.
So it's going to be two parts. The kids are going to be working, first of all, on the research and design of it. And then they're going to actually make a prototype and then put it out on a 3D printer so that we actually have a physical. But then they're also going to put it in VR so we can actually watch it fly and get some ideas or concepts
Hmm.
of issues and problems. Now, we're going to look at the Azusa Canyon here in Azusa as our place to flight is, but we can't be going out there and doing it all the time. So we're going to bring the canyon into the goggles. The students will
Wow.
be able to actually put on the goggles. They're at the canyon now. They got their copter in front of them and they're launched it. And they're able to see how far it could go before it loses signals or some of the issues they might find with the weights and stuff. Even though there is no weight, the program actually compensates for those weights in the program itself.
Hmm.
So this is something that I see as part important in making prototypes with experimentation and then using your imagination to actually create this stuff.
So which industries out there uses VR the most? I mean, I would imagine education is one of them, being that being an industry. But which industries do you see utilizing the VR, the technology that you're mentioning?
Actually, the top one right now is the medical fields.
Okay.
Okay, because they're taking samples from people actually. They can actually say you have a tumor in your body. They can actually put you through a scanner and get that little object that you have and then bring it out and actually look at it without even touching you at this point. So they have an idea of what they're working with at that point. So VR is being used by medical fields. They're using it to train people. You mentioned the automotive. Yeah, you can actually build a whole automotive engine, in the VR glasses. You won't get your hands dirty, that's for sure, but it does give you a concept of what you're going to do when you hit the real thing. You already have played on the virtual, and now you're working in the real field on these engines and stuff. Um, Entertainment industry is another big one for
Yeah.
this. I mentioned engineering because it's great for making prototypes and different types of designs, of course. The art fields are also starting to get more into it, and they're looking for ways to express themselves to create other industries. Like we have a friend that you and I know, Dionysus.
Hmm.
He's taken 3D imagery of houses and buildings and stuff, and that's really great. And you can use this on your computer. But if you have the goggles, instead of watching on your computer, why don't you walk through the building yourself?
Hmm.
You can do that when you have the goggles on.
Yeah.
So what's available? I know NASA is starting to use it, think about using it with the next couple of robots they're going to send to Mars.
Hmm.
And here's what they're looking at. Once the robot's on Mars, it will be going down the trails just like it's doing now, except here back on Earth, you're going to have the goggles and you'll be able to stop, look around, and see what you're seeing.
Cool.
You'll be on Mars before you're on Mars.
Wow.
That's kind of cool stuff. That
That.
means we could take it to any moon or planet in our
Mhm.
solar system and do the same thing. So
So
that's
you
going to be kind of fun.
so you can actually teach people to drive using VR glasses and VR headsets, and also race car drivers use it. I hear
Mhm.
athletes use it. I heard also, my goodness, even bakers use it. But let me ask you this: does the military use it for anything?
Well, the military is using it for their drones, number one. So a lot of them are flying drones with their goggles on. The other thing that they're using, I know down at the Marine base here in California, the soldiers put on the goggles and then they go through a town, maybe an Afghan town. And while they're going through the town, maybe someone will pop out. It's kind of like the old pop-ups they used to have, but now they actually have a person, a 3D imagery they'll see who can fire at them and actually kill them, but not reality. I mean, the computer will call the shot that, yes, this was a deadly shot and you're dead.
Hmm.
Game over. Or else you're wounded or whatever, at this point. So it does give them an idea of what they're going into, and it gives them a chance to actually practice. So, yeah, the military is using it for that. They're also using it for deep sea stuff too.
Okay.
The Navy is to
Um,
send down on mini subs, and then again, they're wearing the goggles to kind of get this 3D view of what's around them.
That's amazing. And what kind of jobs are there? I mean, I would imagine you need video people to capture the images of whatever it is that's going to be seen through the headsets. Do you need 3D modeling and animators, or do you need, I mean, what constitute the, if I put in a on a helmet, how do I see the worlds besides it's being in front of me? But what if there's like a model of a heart? Like how
Mhm.
would that be inputted into the headset? Does it need a 3D animator? What does it need?
Well, yeah, 3D animation, first of all, a program. And there's a number of programs out there. Everything from Blender to God, I have a list of about six of them that are out there, and they cost different amounts of money, of course. But
You
the
mentioned
point
four of
is,
them.
yeah, they're looking for 3D artists. That's what they're looking for at
A
this point.
Blender, what else? Maya, is that one?
Maya's another one. It's a big one. Yeah.
Mhm. 3D Studio Max, is that still around?
Yes. It's still around. I think they call it something else now. They
I think
changed
they
the name.
call it just Max. I think it's just Max. Or I
Yeah.
don't know what it's called.
I think it is at max. It's four something max. But
Okay, so we got the three that we just mentioned. So, I just want to let the students know what they may want to study. I think getting proficient in Maya and 3D Max, and of course, you mentioned Blender, right?
mhm.
So so getting the skill set to learn 3D, so it's a pretty valuable thing, and you don't have to go to school for that, right? You can just burn the midnight oil and
Pretty much. Yeah. I would say that if you're going to school, keep this in mind. I got this from the Disney Imagineers.
Mhm.
They told me that when they bring in someone who's coming in as a designer or an artist, they'll actually ask them to come in with their samples. They are not interested in the three top things you have. If you're an artist and you draw on paper, they're not interested in the top three drawings. They're not interested in the top three things you did at school that everybody else did. They want to see what you've done, and they want to see from the beginning to the end. They want to see if there's progress.
Mhm.
So if in the days past, artists would come in with three, they were like thanked very much and sent on their way. But if they came in with 100 pages showing how they started drawing and where they are now, they were hired. They're looking for progress.
Mhm.
So for anybody going into design and art world, the graphic world or the design world, this is going to be key. It'll be from the basics on, and you don't need to go to school for this. You can learn this on your own. There's plenty of stuff going on YouTube. We live in a whole different entrepreneurial world than we did back when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And there's so much you can learn. For example, if they want to get into 3D animation, I would suggest Unreal Engine. That seems to be the number one. It's
Real Engine. So
very top heavy.
that a software?
Pardon me?
Is that a software?
Yeah, it's a software. It's a really a gaming software. And again, when I say the word gaming, that seems to turn off teachers again. But it's used for so much more than just that. And right now I'm starting to see with Unreal Engine, they do have a modeling software within it. It's not as good as I've seen with Maya or even Blender.
All right.
It's a lot harder. There are still little bugs with it, but people don't generally use that program to model. They bring models in, and once those models come in, that's the real great part of it.
Okay.
Then you can do all kinds of stuff. You can animate it. You can manipulate it any way you want.
hmm And so what about, okay, so how does AI impact that job market?
Okay.
Animators and modelers for 3D for the virtual reality world.
Now, AI has come in supposedly as a threat, but it's really not a threat. I mean, again, I've been working with AI since the 80s too. I remember the very first program I worked with was called New Rochelle. And back in those days, it wasn't that powerful, but it gave me the concept of what artificial intelligence was. It has come so far now. And of course, if you give it the right prompts and everything, you can pretty much create anything you want. True. The one thing where AI is limited is that it is constrained to the amount of learning data it's been given. And that's based on the biases of the programmer. And that doesn't mean it's a negative or a positive. It's just that if I'm a programmer and I want to my AI program to be trained to do things. I will choose the types of articles and stuff I wanted to make.
Hmm.
I'll program it so that it comes within those pref preferences between it. And the one thing I'm seeing is that it doesn't have total creativity. For example, I play around with a lot of the AI animation tools. Interesting enough, I've tried everything from GPT-TAT to Leonardo to Claude, you name it. Ask it to make a portrait of Leonardo da Vinci. It knows what Leonardo da Vinci is. And then I give it the trick every time to see if it's being improved. Put put Leonardo in the scenario where he is writing or painting a picture with his left hand. It always puts it on the right.
Really?
If I pursue it, it'll add another hand, so Leonardo has three hands, but it won't put it on the left. And the reason for that is that programmers have a bias towards right-handers. You can't put something on the left hand. It's really,
Wow, that's weird. Why?
yeah. I'm waiting for that time to come when I can actually do it and say it and say, all right, Leonardo, because he was a left-hander, he wrote and he painted. He was ambidextrous, I know,
Yeah,
but you don't see him writing with his left hand.
right.
And when I said write a letter with Leonardo's left hand, I can't do it. None of them can.
Interesting.
So that's an interesting bias that's there.
Dive into. Okay, so we established that there are certain job markets for the VR world. What about programming? Is there programming involved? I would imagine there is, because a lot of these VR headsets, they use apps, don't they? They download apps into there and they start working it, and but these apps needs programmers. Is there room for that?
Yes, the one program that seems to be generating the most interest is C sharp.
C sharp, okay.
Yeah, not C++ or Python, though Python is used, but C sharp is the one that's being used mostly by the VR community.
Okay.
So
And
if you have kids out there interested in learning to become programmers for this stuff, yeah, C sharp's a good one. It's not a hard language to learn,
okay.
but it is the one that's being used for VR sets and stuff, AR too.
Mhm.
And we're starting to see now a little bit more where AR is being implemented into VR
Mhm.
so that you can actually pick up objects and stuff like that.
And so if I wanted to do a virtual tour of my campus or a
Mhm.
virtual tour, like say I'm in St. Louis, okay, and I want to give a virtual tour of the city. And I go up and down the arc, the St. Louis Arc, and I go to the many, different features of St. Louis. And I want it to be done in virtual reality, so I can give people how do we go about doing that?
So the steps on that is taking photographs of your walk every so many feet. I forget what it is at this point. Making sure that you're taking a good 360 picture of everything you're doing. Eventually, all this is taken into a program where it's all stitched together. You don't have to do it. It'll stitch it together. Once it's been stitched and it's ready and you're able to see it on your computer and you're able to go through it, the way it'll work in VR is in VR, let's take Meta. You use your hands to create a loop that falls on the ground with a circle. And by clicking on it, it advances you.
Mhm.
So you don't necessarily have to walk it.
Okay.
Because with Meta, you could take any program you have right now in the set and go outside or go inside or whatever and create a certain uh, border around you and walk around it. That's fine. But for something like large for what you're talking about, a school and stuff,
Mhm.
it won't take that much. You don't have that much memory.
Okay.
So what you'll have to do is use its own controls where you can still move around like you're walking, but
Mhm.
get around to everything you want. And you can even import Google into it.
Okay.
Google Earth, that could be imported into a Meta.
Interesting.
And you can walk. In fact, I had one student of mine. He's from the past. His name is Stephen Andrews.
Mhm.
Stephen's worked with a variety of different companies in the past, but he's mostly into VR and stuff like that. He was the one who introduced me to the VR sets. And when I came over to his house and I was in his garage, and he put the VR set on me, the actual goggles. And when I looked inside, I didn't see much. It looked like his garage. Basically, I just saw kind of a black and white garage of his. And I said, okay, I got him on. What now? He says, how do you feel? And I said, I feel fine. He says, great. Well, look around. And when I looked behind me, where the door was for the garage door, there was a glass window. And outside the window, I could see it was like a pathway going out to the edge of I'm going to say a mountain. I could see the trees. I could see the mountains behind it. And he told me to go ahead and walk out there, and I did. And the minute I left the garage, I could hear the sounds of the birds and even the sounds of the wind. Got close to a tree, and his set was very high end. You could see with a very good resolution, even the bark on the tree.
Hmm. Cool.
Uh, and I thought, yeah, I was really, really stoked by that. And then he said, "Where would you like to go? If you could go anywhere, Mr. Romero, where would you like to go?" And I said, "Oh, Florence, Italy." He says, "Stand by." Next thing I know, I'm transported through Google Earth to the streets of Florence, Italy. And I'm
Wow.
walking down, and I'm walking to the big cathedral, this big cathedral I've always read about. And I'm looking up at it and saying, "Wow, this is cool. Boy, if I could only go inside," he says, "why not?" So
Hmm.
I go up the steps, open the door, and I'm inside the cathedral, looking inside and going around it.
Hmm.
Okay. The only thing that was missing, I said, the only thing was missing is a smell. I said, I'm sure that if I was in Florence, Italy, there'd be a smell. You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
get that Italian smell type thing. But anyway, yeah, that started to turn me on a lot. And he's been a good mentor for a lot of the ideas I've had too in the past.
Yeah, and I want to tell the audience that a good way, because I know Google Maps, or Google Earth rather, has an app that you can download from one of these Oculuses, okay? And I did download that. And one of the places I wanted to visit more than any other place was actually Salisbury Hills in, I want to say, the UK, Britain maybe, Salisbury
Hmm.
Hills. Peter Gabriel from, sang a song about Salisbury Hill, and it is just beautiful. Oh my God, I want to move there. It's so beautiful. Such lush greenery, the town, old town feel is just lovely. It looks like it was very peaceful. But yeah, sometimes if I want to visit places, I just go through Google. It might be safer, you know?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think that's just okay, so we've established that. Now let me ask you this. You said that to create that you need to take still pictures. What about video? Can people use video to produce this, or is it not, is
The
that not?
video works. It needs a lot more memory. That's the problem.
Okay.
Whereas with stills, you can control the amount of pixels and the pictures and stuff, the resolution. So yeah, but you can use video. But I want your students to also think about VR as a tool. Now, we go back to the 1980s when the computers were just starting to come out, the first personal computers. People thought, okay, this is going to be something you could use for accounting, something you could use for business. There were the game aspects of it. No one, not too many people at this point are thinking beyond that.
Hmm.
They're not seeing this tool with all its versatility. And
Right.
right now, that's where we are with VR and AR
Hmm.
and MR, which is a mix of both of them. The idea is that we're at the beginning. It's open right now for the one controlling factor, and that's the imagination coming from the student.
Okay.
Whatever you can imagine, that's where we want to get to this
What
next
about these
stage.
360 cameras that you can find in Amazon and other places? I
Those
mean,
work great.
those work great. So are those
Yeah.
good for like, creating VR films?
Yeah. And there are even apps you can put onto your Apple or your Samsung's type thing. They
Mhm.
work very good. I've taken them down. I've tried a couple apps down there at Capistrano. I took pictures, and you have to take them kind of shots at a time, but you do it all around you, and then it stitches them all together within a few minutes. Actually, a few seconds, it seems like.
What stitches them together? What software
The,
stitches them?
the the software actually stitches all these units together so that when you look at it, you're using your camera, but you're able to maneuver around the area and
Right.
see everything, right?
Yeah.
Now, this was great when we got home and I wanted to go back to Capistrano and I was there.
Hmm.
Now, take that and put it into VR. and now you're standing in the picture. This is where VR come this is where the magic of VR comes in. This is the this is Alice's Wonderland mirror. You walk into it and you actually are in it. It's everything we've always dreamt about. Wouldn't it be great if we could actually walk into that picture? And today
I
you
would
can do
love
that.
that.
Yeah,
Rather than a green screen, we got the actual live thing.
right.
But I mean, so it starts up with us capturing footage.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying that there is a software that stitches all that together.
Mm-hmm.
What is the name of the software? Can you give us an example?
I can look it up. It's quite a few of them, but let me see if I can look it up for you. Go
Sure.
ahead and shoot me another question if you like while I'm looking it
Yeah.
up.
So, and then once that happens, you upload it to a web host or
Well, you don't have to. Actually, it's done on your phone,
okay.
so it doesn't go into the cloud or anything.
Okay. So once it's on your so okay, so this is a mobile application.
Yes.
Okay. So then you can go ahead and do that, and then I would imagine then somehow, some way. But does it have to be accepted by the VR headset as how does somebody find that software, or do you have to type it in?
Well, the one I'm looking at right now, I have my Apple phone open. So, teleport
Uh-huh.
360-degree camera.
Okay.
There's another one called Camera 360 Selfie Editor.
Okay.
And there's one called Panorama 360 and Virtual Tours.
Okay. So this
Each
is
of those
all
has, there's a whole host of them,
by the
actually.
phone, right? This is all footage taken by the phone.
Yeah. So if you just put in the word 360 camera,
Hmm.
you'll get a whole list of them and you can look at the different ones that they have.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So,
And they're all free to try, so you can give an experiment with them.
okay. So in other words, the camera captures everything, but you have to control it through your phone or mobile device.
Right.
Okay, got it. So it's not like I carry a regular analog camera, like a video camera, and just take footage and then take export the footage into something and then it.
Now, they do have those.
Okay, I was wondering about that.
Yeah, hang on a second. I can get that real quick.
And I think this is just really fascinating and how more and more people don't take advantage of this. Because I mean, one of the biggest joys I have in when I travel is taking city tours. I took a
And
Houston
you
tour.
take a lot of pictures too.
I do, yeah, and I love taking it because I want to, and it's not because I want to share it with people. It's more for me. So, 5, 6, 10 years down the road, I can look, hey, this is what I did. Nashville was such an amazing city. And so I took a lot of pictures and wondering, can I take those pictures and create a virtual tour with those pictures? I don't know.
Yeah, I was looking on Amazon, and the cheaper ones vary from anywhere from $200 to $300.
Okay.
The more professional ones are around $5,000 to $6,000. So those are going to be high end, high resolution.
Oh, yeah. Hmm.
There's some for $600 too, but these are cameras that, again, they'll take the 360 around
Okay.
and they have the software already inside. They're ready to go to stitch them up and everything. And
Yeah.
again, it depends on the amount of memory you have in those cameras.
Right, right. And of course, 3D animation would be a whole different process where you upload it into.
But students can actually start with a smaller camera just to get the idea of the concept because it's not much different between the smaller ones and the more expensive ones. It's like the old day of cameras. The camera doesn't take the picture, the photographer does.
Hmm.
It's
Right.
the eye of the eye of the photographer that does it. So,
And what is a qualification of an educator? What kind of skills, what kind of training, if you will, should an educator have? I mean, who can teach? I guess, Bob, who can teach this? Because I thought I could do it. Okay, I tried. Problem is, I am not a 3D animator or a modeler. I mean, I'm a video person and I'm a photographer, but I'm also not a programmer either. So, what kind of teacher, what kind of skill sets does the teacher have to teach this?
well, they should have some knowledge in programming.
Okay.
Okay. They should have some knowledge. You got the photography, which is a big part of it. That's for both videography and photography. Uh, the next stage is really a lot of experimentation. I think it's really come down to entrepreneur stuff.
Hmm.
A lot of the people that are working in industry right now don't have a degree, but
Okay.
they have a
Yeah.
skill, and it's a skill you're learning. You know what I mean? So that's all it is. And the work I've seen, what you do, really, you're already at advanced at the big part of it. You got the big third right there with the photography and
Feel
stuff.
good.
Yeah, and of course the VR is nothing but an extension of that.
Okay.
Because if you think about it, photography is just 2D. Now you're getting to 3D.
Hmm.
So a lot of people will say, "Oh, I have to be a programmer. I have to know all this stuff." No, you don't. You can actually do a lot of this without programming.
So, in other words, a photographer can create a virtual world or a virtual show just by simple photography. Well, you'll have to.
Right. Yeah. And you got a lot of kids that are learning the games, and what they're doing is here's another thing you tell your students to learn how to reverse engineer,
Okay.
especially on the games that they're looking at or whatever. How do I make that game? If they're learning, let's say Unreal Engine, learn the basics. They're not that hard to learn. They take a little practice. You have to have the right computer for it. But once you got the basics down, now you got a program that you already like. Reverse engineer it. How do
Okay.
you reverse engineer it to do the same thing? You want to copy because the one thing we always think of, and especially with as educators, we always say, don't copy. But every artist that we can think of going back through history had to copy something. Michelangelo and Da Vinci copied the Greeks. They copied other artists. Then other people copied them.
Hmm.
And it's been going that way. You always copy the person above you. And then maybe you're one of those that takes that left turn or right turn. Instead of continuing on the process, like by the time we get into the 19th century, all of a sudden we got modern art. We have Picasso and Gauguin and all these guys, they all practiced and got the Renaissance art and everything, all the realism correct. But then they decided to veer off different directions. They knew how to do the real stuff, but they decided we're going to take it a different angle.
Okay.
So
That's pretty fun. So, is there a place that teachers like myself who want to teach this stuff and really, because I think I'm ready to take a dive into this, and I believe this is an important world and an important skill set to introduce. I don't know if high school's too early for this. I know that colleges teach this, but where can a teacher like myself get the training for VR? Because I'm willing to even pay for this. I will definitely take that class as an educator and become the student again, and then go back to educating again.
I don't think you need to take a course.
Okay,
I
even
really
better.
don't. I really don't. You won't find books on VR. You'll find books on VR talking about the headsets, the different ones you can get.
Yeah, yeah,
But you need to just to get into the experience of them and experiment with it. There's no way for you to break it, by the way. It's like a computer. When people started computers on a computer for the very first time, they're always very careful about the keys because
yeah.
they're afraid it's going to break. And it's like, no, you can't destroy it. Same with VRs. I mean, you can throw the thing down and break it that way, but you know what I mean? The VR set is nothing more than a cell phone inside. That's what it is.
Wow. Okay, that's a now
So
that
if you know how to use a cell phone, you can use a VR set.
okay, because that's another thing is the intimidation factor involves in those headsets because I guess in a way, am I getting this right? Or which world am I getting? Where am I putting myself into? Am I going down the volcano or down the rabbit hole? Or am I going to Mars and not, these things kind of question, but you're shedding a really good light. I think you're right. I want to be able to teach this to the students and to be able to, offer this even as maybe a unit or two. I don't know if I can offer it as an entire course, but I think this needs to be taught. I
Yeah.
mean, it has to be taught because this is the future. This is where people are going.
Well, let's take last summer. I had a group of students, high school students,
Yeah, I
who
remember. Yeah,
who
I've
never
seen
had
that
used
part.
Blender. They
Yeah.
didn't use Blender. I thought I would have to spend the first 2 weeks teaching them it.
Uh-huh.
But they decided, rightly, that all they had to learn was what they needed to know in order to do it. They did it on paper first and on a whiteboard.
Hmm.
Then they said, how do we make this rectangle, which
Hmm.
is what they were working on. The whole course was this. You got to create a virtual reality passenger high-speed rail train. However, it has to be life size, not a model, a life size, so you can walk through it.
Hmm.
So I told him, I said, now remember, the only thing that's different here is the size, but everything else is the same as if you had built a small one. Now, I had nothing to do with teaching them beyond that first day. That was it. They started to realize that all they need to know was the shapes, how to govern the shapes, how to connect them. They did it all themselves, and by the end of the 6 week, they had it all completed and done.
Yeah, well, I mean, okay, that I
You
remember.
can do it.
Like
I
you
know
said,
you can do it,
I'll tell
Jim.
you, some of the
You're a
students.
really smart guy. You really are.
Yeah, I mean, some of those students, they were the best of the best. I mean, that's another thing is that the aptitude does aptitude matter, or can anybody just jump right in? Because, like I said, I know who you're talking about. Those three or four of my those students were my
Yeah.
students, and I referred them, and they just kind of they're so smart. They're geniuses. There's a lot of them are already they're right away. They're in four-year universities. They're about to graduate from that. So, can is there an aptitude for a student to have?
No, it's just a passion and a goal to do it. You know, it's like anything else. It's something, it's a tool you have to learn how to use.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you like when we used to teach back in the day when we had wood shops and all this kind of stuff, most kids didn't use a lot of the tools that they had at home. However, they needed to learn how to use it in order to finish their project.
Yeah.
That was their motivation, and then all of a sudden they did it.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So they have to have this goal, what they want to do, and then that motivation is what kicks it in. The passion is going to have to stay on because, yeah, it can get boring and tiresome like anything.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's a skill. It's a skill. You don't have to have brains for it. You know, you do it. Well, you know what I mean. It's not like you have to be born with this talent. This is a skill that's it's a learning set. Anyone can learn it, but they have to be willing to take those steps to do it. They can't do it in one day.
No, no, I was about to say this is something you don't learn overnight. It takes
No,
months, maybe even.
or sometimes just weeks. But it's going to be consecutive that you're doing it.
Yeah,
And
yeah, you got to
have
keep
something at
going.
the end you're actually going to do. You know, you want to finish it.
Well, something for me to look into, when I have some downtime, and I absolutely love this conversation because this is so important. So, tell me what you are doing. You have a website called Leonardo's Apprentice or something like that.
Correct. Huh?
Tell
The
me.
concept behind it was being an apprentice of Leonardo. I always thought, what would it be cool to be an apprentice of Leonardo?
That'd be cool.
And then I chose three basically. I didn't want to do the STEM model. I'm not the STEM. What I am is science, engineering, and the arts.
Sure.
I always thought if I brought Leonardo to the 21st century and had a chance to do what you're doing now and interview him, and you would say to Leonardo, at the core, what are you, an engineer or a scientist? And he'd say, I'm an artist,
Yeah. Mhm.
you know? And that's what he was. Everything came out of that artwork. You know, he drew everything he did. I mean, today his plans are so detailed. People have been able to make copies of it and make them 3D models and everything. So he was brilliant in that respect. But he was an artist. That's all he was.
Right.
Just an artist who had passions for just about everything he was doing and
But
ideas. He let his ideas, he let his dreams be his
is
uh, feeder. It's like
mhm.
our brains can take all this information in from textbooks and tests and all that kind of stuff. But unless we start feeding our brains with dreams, we're not going to go anywhere.
Mm.
It's the
I-
dreams that make us
Very
go,
important.
Yeah.
We feed our brains with dreams, we're not going to go anywhere. I love that.
Uh,
That's really it. So, but tell me again, what are you trying to do? I mean, I know you've connected with a lot of school districts and you're trying to get them to try to offer this as a course or a pathway.
well, I worked almost 4 decades as an instructor.
Okay.
And I think every class or every project I ever did was a project-based class. I always found that that was the key to learning. Like in my art classes, it wasn't important the students knew that Leonardo or Michelangelo did this sculpture or this painting or whatever on this date and etc. I wanted them to know the story behind it. I wanted them to get the feeling of who the artist was. And so when I finally decided to do Leonardo's Apprentice, the idea was I want to bring this up to 21st century standard. We're still operating in a 19th century mold. You know, I think if someone said to you, Jim, you know what, for this year, you can do anything you want. You won't be held responsible for the curriculums or anything. You develop your own curriculum. What do you think? You're a professional instructor, and I know you would come out with some creative stuff already, but we're constrained. And now I said, I'm not going to be constrained anymore. I'm no longer in the system. I'm outside the system, but I want to introduce what I'm doing in the system. I want to introduce instructional design. I want to introduce project-based learning too. I figure that's the best way for students to learn. It keeps them motivated. It answers their questions. They always seem to resolve it. And the key was never to give them the answer because
Right.
they'll come up with a different one, and sometimes it's even better,
Hmm.
you know? And I've been working like this even when I was working in the private school. We got to work with JPL NASA. I was on several space shuttle missions, had nothing to do with them, told the students what the problem was. They came up with the solutions all the time,
Wow.
you know?
That's pretty darn
I
amazing.
mean, you always have an idea. We all, as teachers, we all always have, this is the way I would have done it. It's like an artist.
Hmm.
But if you let the student actually create what he or she wants to do, they'll come out with some amazing stuff too.
I would imagine that they would.
Yeah.
And such an enlightening so I think that all high schoolers, if you hear me, you should definitely tell your guidance counselors or your person in front of your in charge of your CT program to really introduce the whole. Now, do you offer a course over the summer, I believe?
Yes. Yeah, we're
Tell us
looking at
about
some
that.
courses.
Is it online or is it
No, it's going to be last year we had let's see, Azusa High School, of course, was in it. So was Duarte and Monrovia, and we held it at Monrovia just because of the space. It
okay?
wasn't because it was the school. It was just we needed that space to do it. Um, but it worked really well, and every year we're trying to incorporate these projects. The students do get paid for it. These are internships that are paid, which is another motivation factor.
Mhm.
And the range just goes from 500 to $1,000 depending on the project they're working on.
And they have to
They
go on.
work with actual people in the industry, so
Okay.
this is cool.
And do they have to go on location or can they do this virtually?
We haven't done it as a hybrid yet.
Okay.
That's a good idea to think about it though.
Mhm.
But
Okay.
yeah.
Well, I certainly hope that they offer this. I think um, they need to introduce at least as units. Like you've kind of touched me in the fact that I should kind of introduce it, and we do a lot of things, especially with the drones. There's VR headsets that connect to the drones
Mhm.
and actually control the drone. Like if I nod my head that way, the drone will also nod their head. It's really amazing.
You're up in the air.
Yeah, it's like
You're
we're up
like a
in
bird
the
flying, you know? That's cool.
it's like the first time you're actually flying, which is just an unbelievable feeling. And then, of course, you're touching the world. You're helping educate them and training things. Otherwise, people won't have access. I mean, I can imagine some of the poorer nations in the world. They may not have schools and or even in America, some of these don't can't afford to bring in instructors or schools like that. But with VR, everybody can do this. And I wanted to touch base about this conference that I went to is called the ACTE. It's CTE, Career and Technical Education, and it's the largest lobbying group of CTE teachers in America. And the one in Nashville that I went to has, attracted 5,000 educators around the country. And there was a big display and big talk about virtual reality and where it's going and what's happening. And states that you normally thought are kind of like, you know, not very educationally orientated. And forgive me if I mention your states. So like Kentucky, West Virginia, Louisiana, the typical kind of states that are not very regarded as advanced states, not like California, New York, Texas, but they are pouring millions and millions of dollars into their CTE programs. Some of these schools have about, four, five, six, up to 10 pathways. And you know why? Because those kids don't go to college per se. So they try to educate them as much as possible in-house at the high school level. And then hopefully they get an internship in the industry and then start their livelihood, start their careers. I think that's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, well, look at all these inventors from the past, from the 80s. We're looking at Steve Jobs and Followers. A lot of these guys didn't go to college or
Yep,
dropped out,
we dropped out.
and they became the entrepreneurs. They had the they had enough instruction to do what they had, or they had the ideas and got the right people involved,
Right.
and they changed the world.
Yeah,
And now we're looking for the next generation to do that.
yeah.
My generation is going out, but we need to get this new generation, the Z and the Alphas, involved in doing all this stuff for the future too.
Well, that's amazing that you're doing this, Peter, because like you said, your generation didn't really understand this or know this, but yet
Yeah.
you have the wherewithal to introduce this to the Gen Zers, the Gen Yers or the millennials, you want to call it. And then of course Gen Alpha's coming up. But you see the future, you're living the future, which is really commendable to you, by the way.
Yeah. I don't see myself as one of them. I'm the bridge
Right.
between my analog background and the digital world because
Yeah.
I was in that process back in the 80s when we transferred from analog into digital.
Okay.
So,
Are,
that was kind of cool. So that's
is there
cool.
government funding for this form of study?
That's a good question. I think there is, but I've stayed away from it on purpose because the minute you do, they set the criteria of what they want to see as results.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden you're stuck in trying to pay the piper for the money.
Okay.
So I've tried through at this point through private funders who see what I'm doing and believe in what I'm doing, and they're willing to fund the programs I'm doing right now.
Okay. Okay.
But
Well,
there is government money for people who want to do it. Yeah.
mhm. Well, the topic today was virtual reality, how to get into it, how to work it, a little more information, some new stuff that I've never heard about. So, Peter, I want to thank you so much for being on this podcast. It really, you opened a lot of eyes, and I certainly am going to bat for you. And if something we can do together to promote this, because I think this is so critically important, at least in the educational sense. People can learn and without having to be there in class, that is really, and of course, people like my age, who kind of missed the boat on this and they want to become that nurse or that aerospace engineer or that pilot that they can learn how to do that without having actually necessarily be physically over there, which I think is really fantastic. So I want to thank you, sir. We'll be in touch.
Well,
And
thank you for having me. I really appreciate it
oh,
too.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And I will say to this, uh, this is Peter Romero on Mr. Haig's podcast. My name is Jim Haig. I want to thank you all, and we'll see you next time.